Was it a heart attack, Doctor?
No. Died of dehydration. Thirst.
Well, that doesn't make any sense. That takes a couple of days, doesn't it?
Maybe even 3 or 4.
You mean he sat up there 3 or 4 days? He sat up there and just died of thirst?
Hello, listening people.
Hello.
You're listening to Spit and Polish Presents. I am one of your hosts, Ryan Swinski.
And I'm Bartek.
Hi, Bartek. How are you?
Doing well, Ryan. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Fantastic. Wow.
I'm doing fan. 4-stick. I'm very well. I'm very well. I'm here to talk to you about a movie. So that is also what I'm doing.
I'm here to listen to you about a movie.
Oh, you're not going to talk? You're not going to offer opinions? You're just going to listen quietly and nod and smile?
Well, no, because nodding doesn't work on this medium, so I'm going to
Well, you make a noise when you nod. You like, yes, indeed.
Yes, but that's what I mean. I'm going to vocalize my nodding for the listening people.
Cool. So Bartek's here as the Polish element of the spitting in Polish. I'm the spitting part because I'm spitting facts, as the youth say. Pictures Powwow, which is our show where we talk about a movie that has come recommended. Bartek, what was the recommendation? Who was it by? What's happening for those who can't read?
This week, we are doing our Listening People's recommendation, as we do every 3 episodes. This time, we are doing the 1990 film Tremors, which was recommended to us by our friend Wet Wild Will.
Wet Wild Will, or just Will for short, to his friends, or Billy Bob. For his real friends.
I think about the fact that he's technically Billy Bob a lot.
Billy Bob is actually here, Bartek.
What?
In the room, talking to himself quietly, internally. I'm looking at him right now.
Oh, so that's who that is.
I can tell that he's internally talking, but maybe he will verbalize it out loud to us right now.
It's time to get external. Hello, listening people. It's your boy, Will.
Hi, Will.
Hi, Will.
How are you doing?
Yeah, actually pretty good.
He's
things considered.
He's doing pretty good. All things considered, Will is willingly here to talk to us about Tremors. So for the people out there listening, unlike the people in here talking, if you have not seen the film Tremors from 1990, give it a watch. We're going to talk about it, spoilers, details, go through the whole film, or at least some of it, enough of it to make it worthwhile seeing beforehand, so that if you haven't seen it, you can watch it and feel the experience for yourself. Come back and listen. It's the age-old routine that I have to give, but there are people out there, douches I like to call them, who will come in and be like, you spoiled the film from 30 years ago. Boo-hoo.
Then we'll tell
Sorry,
them,
guys.
It's actually 31 years ago.
It's actually 31 years ago, motherfuckers. So, Bartek, could you please give us a rundown of the plot of Tremors?
So Tremors is set in a very remote desert town. And it's about 2 men who are tired of their lives there and they want to move out. But things happen to stop them from moving out, which go into the realm of super non-fiction when big monsters are causing trouble.
Do you remember the town's name?
Isn't it like Perfection or something?
Perfection, Nevada.
Yeah.
What a title. What a great town there. It's got like a population of 14.
Yep.
We meet all of them, which is great. Will, you recommended this film. Could you give us a brief reasoning as to why you recommended it and your history and relationship with Tremors?
When you asked me to come on again, it was like, oh, you got to pick a film, and I'm like really racking my head. It's like, what do I want to pick?
We actually decided to have you on this episode before we picked a film.
Yeah.
I should have provided that context because, like, the people listening, and
I did.
I'm not like psychic or anything, but I keep assuming it's like, yeah, people know what's going on in my head, and no one does. So
only the true worshippers know.
Some people know. They probably regret that they know.
There's different factions of beliefs of what your understandings are. There's the Protestants and the Catholics.
It's a complicated gestalt.
I think I'm at this point. I think I'm like bishop class.
Your bishop class.
Yeah.
I'm definitely some kind of pope level. I don't know. So,
So I was racking my brain, and I eventually decided I wanted to do a horror movie, but not. And Tremors is not like a particularly scary movie. It's pretty mild.
Yeah.
I think most people, even if they're like, "Oh, I don't like horror," could handle Tremors. I don't think it's gonna be, "Whoa, this is too much."
Yeah, that's a good thing to discuss at some point.
So I went to. Yeah, no, I actually want to bring that up because I saw on the internet there was a bit of controversy of just, "Oh, Tremors isn't a horror movie," and then other people are like, "Yeah, no, Tremors is a horror movie," so you know.
Yeah.
So there's it's in dispute, but I'm getting distracted. So yeah, I decided on Tremors just because I really rather do like this movie.
Yeah.
And my history of it, it's one of the ones I went through a period in high school where I would just go to the fucking Blockbuster in Cranbourne and just get basically every monster movie I could find. I got that one, and it was actually something I watched with my family a lot, my brother and my dad. And when I rewatched it for the podcast, I watched it with my dad.
Nice.
So it is. This is kind of one of the go-to movies I watch with my brother and my dad, though it has actually been before last night. It actually had been a few years since I watched it.
Your mum doesn't want to watch it? She's too scared?
No, she's afraid of snakes. So, and by proxy, sort of anything without legs is a bit like, nah.
So
nah.
worms off the table.
Yeah. So worms are off the table, graboids are off the table, snakes are off the table.
Well, in the film, they get described as snakes at one point.
Yeah.
Like she doesn't even like millipedes because they have a snake-like body part. And
But they got
centipedes,
legs.
even though they have more legs than anything else. But it's a bit like, they're still too snake-like in the general body proportions.
Yeah. I grew up with this film as well. This is definitely a staple in my childhood. I remember we got the DVD trilogy set when there was just the 3 films. There are now 6. So that's amazing. I remember watching this one the most. It's just the most efficient to me of the movies. It hits all the beats. I remember loving this. It is one of those ones that brings a smile to my face when I see it, because I'm not a big monster movie kind of guy, you know, the creature feature type of dude. But this does hit the mark of those things very well, and you know, we could talk about is this a horror movie or not, but this is definitely like a Jaws type movie where, you know, you got the creatures happening for sure, and they raise the stakes, but it's more about the people and the situations they are going through and the interactions and eventual teamwork to overcome the monster. And that is always something within these creature features. When we were at your place, Will, a while back, we watched a Godzilla movie. And that's kind of the Godzilla movies operate on that logic too, but they operate on a more national scale, but it's still the same logic, right? Where it's like, it's not really about Godzilla. It's more about not all the time, but it's about like the scientists and the people.
That one was about aliens who wanted to enslave them like cattle.
Yeah, and obviously
they said that line over and over again.
Oh, did they?
Yeah,
I remember.
They want you to know. They want you to be informed.
We were groaning every time they said it.
They want you to know.
I just remember that the Australian Godzilla was the the one from the Roland Emmerich movie, and they punched it into the Sydney Opera House. Immediately.
I forgot that it was in Sydney.
So that's my relationship with this. I've always loved this movie. I love the atmosphere. I love the characters. I've always loved this movie. I watch this every couple of years. Bartek, what about you? What's your relationship with Tremors?
I hadn't seen it before seeing it for this show, and I quite enjoyed it. It was one of those deals where, like, early on I wasn't too into it, but as it went on, like, I really, really appreciated it.
Did you know much about it before hopping on in?
Not really. It was one of those ones where I'm like, oh yeah, isn't it about, like, earthquakes or, like, some creature that creates
Tremors,
earthquakes?
dare I say?
Yeah.
Well, it kind of is. Kind of not, though. It's more about the tremors that they cause.
Yeah, well, like, the third character you meet is, like, someone studying earthquakes, so, right? Or seismic activity.
Seismic activities.
Seismology. No, wait, that's not right.
So, you didn't know much about this movie. I'm surprised to hear that, because you always, with especially movies like Tremors, this is such a in-your-wheelhouse type of movie to me. Like, this is one where I'm shocked that you haven't seen it, but I'm even more shocked that you haven't heard much about it, considering this is one of those a quintessential cult movie of a certain era that you watch many movie reviewers talk about that certain era.
I've definitely heard it be brought up a lot, but just not much has been retained.
So that is kind of a joy. So Will and I, obviously, we love the movie. We still love the movie. I'm going to ask you a bit more. What was your feelings and journey and experience watching this for the first time, fairly unknowing of what to get from the film?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so because I didn't know too much about it, like I was sure that it had something to do with monsters under the earth, and it was true.
Just the way you said it, like, kind of bitterly, and it was true.
No bitterness, no bitterness. Just
worminess.
Just fact. Yeah, I'm a wormy guy.
When Bartek goes home, his mum tucks him into bed and he just writhes around all night like a fucking worm.
Bartek's just going around the house in his sleeping bag, just sort of arching.
You know, Bartek doesn't actually have a
just
bed. They
across.
just have like a patch out back for him to writhe about in the dirt.
Yeah, they put me in my little
Little
display case for worms.
You know, Bartek really is a pumpkin patch kid, yeah. So go on.
So what I really enjoyed about this film was when it got to the point where it was more than just the two main characters working in the main plots.
Mm-hmm.
Like when everyone kind of got together and
When it became an ensemble piece.
when it became an ensemble piece. And the interesting thing we were talking about, like, is this a horror film? Is this not? It like has all the staples of a horror film. Like people get killed by a thing. They're dangerous. The stakes are really against them, and they have the extra element of like they're learning.
Yeah.
And it's like a huge threat. Like each one they take down, the next one becomes smarter. But what I thought was like the thing that stood out to me the most was not so much the horror, but the fact that this film became very like tactical and smart towards the end. That was what I really, really enjoyed about it.
Yeah, the Jaws comparison is an obvious one to make. I mean, it's very much Jaws, but instead of a shark in the water, it's basically giant sharks under the ground that come up and get you,
Sand
right?
sharks.
Sand sharks.
I watched a little bit of the behind the scenes, and as soon as I started watching the behind the scenes on the Blu-ray, I immediately realized, I was like, oh no, I fucked up. This would have been so great to watch all of these before the podcast, so I'd have all these facts to spit, as the youth say. But I didn't. It was like, it's getting late the night before. I have to get up early, so I'm like, I can't watch all of these. But I did watch some of the creature featurettes.
Yeah, I love
And
how much detail the Blu-ray actually has for a movie like this, because this wasn't a big hit, but then it became like Austin Powers, where it became a big hit on video and rental and stuff, and then it spawned sequels on and it goes. But it's always been great to see that over the years, films like Tremors can actually get a Blu-ray release where they have like all of this extensive material that actually talks about it, because movies like this could easily fall to the wayside, but you see it on the screen how much effort they would have had to have put in to make this movie work. Obviously, the big scene I think of is when the graboid smashes through Bert's basement and they're shooting it, and it's like every single fucking trick in the book is thrown into that scene to make it look like there's a big worm there. And, it's great to actually have, like you said, there's just so many. Like, I watched a couple too, and there's just a lot of material there.
There's tons.
I just love that a film like this actually has stuff that you can dig behind in the behind-the-scenes elements. There have been many movies we've covered on the pod, Bartek, unappreciated masterpieces or pictures Powwow, where we kind of wish that there was more of a treasure trove of information to go behind the scenes of, because you can clearly see on the screen that a lot of work was put in, but we can't find what the mentality was, or the evidence, or the practicality of making this happen. And it's always kind of a very warming experience to actually have one of those movies have those things behind them. Like, that's what we loved about Cannibal the Musical.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like the audio commentary is one of the best things ever, but outside of that audio commentary being like him taking out shots against his ex-girlfriend or ex-fiance, it's like the movie that commentary actually gives you like really detailed pieces of information about what they did making the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you're right, Bartek. This is like a tactical movie. It's about, you know how they say Star Wars, it's a film about family.
Yeah.
This is a film about community. It's about this community
Yeah,
of
yeah.
people
It
working
is, it
together.
is.
And
That's a good way to put it.
I love when you were talking about, I was just smiling from ear to ear, because these are some of my favorite type of movies in which a bunch of characters band together and think tactically. That's why I love Star Trek. I love Star Trek for that, where you get a bunch of characters and they have a scenario and they have to figure out what to do to beat it tactically. That's also why I
Yeah.
love The Thing.
And even though this film did have like stakes of like, technically anyone can die, you didn't really think of these people as just, cannon fodder or fodder to be killed off.
One thing I like about that is, even though there is one thing I like about the community in this film is, even though there's like a bit of animosity between individual characters at points, it's not one of those horror movies where it's like, oh, there's a bunch of jackasses and they don't care about each other. Like, the characters are really genuinely upset every time they lose someone.
I think one of the examples that comes down to of that sense of community and them actually caring about one another, the way of the film follows through on that, other than what you just said of them caring about when people die, is the most volatile two characters in the movie, the prepper characters, the gummers, are proven to be right and very, very handy in the situation that unfolds. So you as an audience member feel like they're no longer volatile antagonists, but heroes of the story, while still not taking away the spotlight from our two main characters. But so when at the beginning you have Bert and he's kind of being a little bit cheeky and a little bit like gun prepper nut and maybe a little bit making some lewd comments towards Chang and all that, it's just like, oh, okay, but you still get a sense that everyone kind of likes each other because he still goes to the shop to get what he wants, and that's giving business to, and it's like all these things. And then by the end of the movie, I use them as the example because you could say that they're the antagonist, the human antagonistic force, but then, no, they're not. They're just really good people who are like, you don't have a gun? Here, take these guns. Good luck. Yeah. And it's just like, the look on Fred Ward's face when they give him these guns and he's like really impressed. He's like, yeah, shit, this is like beneficial to what we need right now. Or the scene in which it's like they're radioing each other on the two roofs or whatever, and our heroes are kind of inconvenienced because the ground's falling underneath them. And the fact that Bird is still like trying to like maintain the situation and be like, look, if you guys are going to go down, at least tell us what to do so we can at least save the mother over there and do this and this and this. It's like that sense of community, that sense of camaraderie is built up to such a degree that I don't mind that the shitty teenager got to live.
Yeah. Again, that was another thing where it's like you can tell that he's gonna like be in this kind of boy who cried wolf situation where eventually, it's not, people are gonna assume that like, oh, he's just pranking us again. But even when that situation does come, they do go and check on him still.
Yeah, and it's as soon as they see he's on the roof, they know, fuck, this is real, and they just get up there because they kind of know, even as much of a dick as he is, he's not that much of a dick, and they could see he's probably bleeding from the leg and all that, and like, oh shit, this is real. It was, it's a great thing. What about you, Bartek? You're a first-time viewer, all of this. What characters within this did you gravitate towards? Because there's a large ensemble of characters. Like I said, there's like 15 people, like 14 from the town and her, that we get to meet.
Yeah, they all were like interesting enough. I wanted them all to live. I mean, obviously, like, the Asian guy, he was funny. He unfortunately didn't make it to the, I guess, full tactical portion of the film.
He did help in the end, though, because of his little ride-on thing that they use to distract the graboid that he uses, which they set up.
Oh, and he also names it.
Oh yeah, he names them graboids.
Yeah.
I also. No, wait. You go first, Bartek. I'll come back to this one. I'll put a pin in it.
So you were saying you liked a lot. You liked all of them. You wanted them to live, but any in particular that you really liked or gravitated towards or really got attached to?
I don't know about in particular, but it was just really nice that all of it's pretty much what you mentioned, like those three characters, like the two gun people and the teenager, like they seemed like kind of the outsiders in a way. But they ended up being, genuinely valued, and they weren't ultimately like cannon fodder. Like they weren't like, oh, he's the tough guy, but he has to be taken down to like indicate that these worm things are, you know, really, really bad.
No, if anything, it's like, oh no, we can solve this situation with brute force.
Yeah, and it was to the point when I was
to a point.
Yeah, and then when I was reading about trivia, I'm like, oh, not only does he survive this film, he becomes the main character of the franchise.
He's the protagonist of the franchise. Will, you want to touch upon what you were going to say before?
Oh, I was just to bring up the Asian gentleman's little tractor thing. I think it was Mr. Chang.
Yeah,
Chang.
yeah.
Yeah, his little. It cracks me up when the bloke with the mustache, I think Miguel was his name, talks about the tractor with a plan to distract the worms. And he refers to the tractor so affectionately. His little tractor races him around, like really anthropomorphizes it. I think it shows a lot of love in that community.
A part of it too is, out of all the characters, he cared about Chang the most. They work together. It's like the last thing of him left, because even Chang's business has crumbled to the ground and is crumbling. One of the things about the sequel films is the third film is called Back to Perfection, because the second one they go down to Mexico. Third one they go back to perfection. They have a lot of the same actors back. The little girl is back. The mum's back. A few of the other characters are back. And Chang's store is now like this major tourism spot, and it's kind of like it's what he wanted. Like, because I love that Chang's just like a capitalist. He's like, I'm just gonna exploit all this for the money I can. I even love, like you said, like he has this Miguel has this affection for this piece of machinery, and yet every character does in some way have affection for an inanimate object. Like the gun nuts have their love for guns. You have their main character's love of their pickup truck that they care so much about. Like, I was so happy about, like, the pickup truck got to live. It got injured at a few points, but it got to live, you know? And the little girl and her pogo stick, which is probably one of my favorite moments of, oh no, the shit's got real. You know what I'm talking about? When all of our characters are like, okay, this is the situation, everything's intense, and then you just hear in the background, and you can hear it during the whole scene if you pay attention.
Yeah, and
they hear her in the background.
Yeah, they even had it as an established fact that she's playing on the road or whatever.
Yeah. They have it as an established fact that she's trying to get a record or beat her own record of how many jumps she's made, and that's probably one of my favorite moments of when you can, you know, the pin drop moment of the audience being like, oh no, because you can't kill the kid. This film doesn't care. This film kills kills people indiscriminately. Like, but that's one of my favorite moments of that. But yeah, it's hard to choose a favorite because they're all so nice. Even the dumb characters are good people. Like, I felt bad for the guy who fell onto the tire and then it just grabbed him through the tire and he was gone. You could hear him screaming underground as the graboid was hurtling towards the next one. He's like, oh, Jesus Christ. I felt bad for him, and he was a bit of a jerk.
I almost forgot about him.
Yeah, like, he's not the most memorable, but I felt bad for him. I was like, oh, that poor guy. Or even, I even felt bad for when they have that shot that's just like, oh, don't worry, someone will come for help. And it cuts to where the construction workers have died, and you see a new car is picked up there, and there's just like blood on the ground, like a paper, like a clipboard or something. It's like, oh no, someone else died too, trying to see what was going on. I even felt sorry for that non-existent person. To go back to you, Will, for a second. This is a creature feature monster movie. We've seen the graboids a lot of times over our lives. How does it feel to you watching it now, all these years later, in a world in which we have CG and a lot of more obvious, like, you know, higher end material? How do you feel about the graboids, how they hold up, and just in general as a creature in your monster movie?
Well, I mean, I suppose I'm not the most objective source, because, I mean, this is a film that I watched a lot in high school, probably around, I want to say year 7, year 8.
Yeah.
And watched it a lot throughout then with my family. So, you know, it's a thing I have a lot of fond memories of. But I don't know, I feel, trying to get out of my own head and be objective, I feel like the creature effects in this have aged really, really well, all things considered. I think it's a really strong monster design. I think by and large they all still look really, really good.
I like how this film is filled with what I love, details. details. Everything's got a setup. Everything's paid off. There's little details like on Chang's store. You see the name of the old store is faded and just painted over with his name. I love the details that they bother to put in with the graboids of like, this is how they move through the dirt so well. And this is like the front of their head is designed this way, like this, exoskeleton so it can plow through this. And they stink. They stink so much, which is great because I've encountered creatures that live on the under the ground and they do stink. They do stink quite a lot. And the fact that in this movie they don't give us an answer of where the graboids came from or what they are. You have people being like, I think they're prehistoric. Others like, they're fucking aliens. I don't know what the fuck this is. Yeah. And it's like, what was that? I love that, but I love the little details on the graboids. Like, I love their multiple tongues that have little mouths, I guess, or like little things that grab onto you. And of course, as all movies do, you have that one monster that has the physical trait that makes them identifiable, whether it be Stripe from Gremlins. You have what do they call the one with the missing tongue? The one that
do they call him Stumpy at one point?
Yeah, Stumpy or whatever. The one whose tongue got ripped off on their pickup truck at the start of the movie.
Yeah.
Hence, they thought that was just the monster itself. Was its stinky tongue?
That's such a great bit too. The revelation that it's not. They're not just like you think. Oh, it's a big old snake, and it's like it's actually a much larger monster.
Yeah. Like they were doing, and they were talking about in the trivia about how they were trying to battle between like keeping them a secret, but also showing them at the same time to emphasize the creature feature thing. You still kind of have the mystery element or surprise element where it's more than what you were just thinking they were.
I feel a lot of monster movies, like sometimes you can run into the problem of you don't see the monster very much. I feel Tremors, despite being a fairly low budget film to my understanding, is very, very generous with showing you these creatures.
Yeah, and they're smart in terms of the concept itself lends to the fact that we shouldn't see them, because really, do you really want to see a shot of them underground worming around in the way that you could have done, or would you rather just when they burst up and grab you, and or those quick shots that they have of their POV of the dirt just crumbling in front of them as they go somewhere? And also, the movie, even though we could complain about this, but we don't, because this is a great film and it does this very well, it's not so much about the visual spectacle, it's about the audio. The audio in this movie, just the sounds. Once you know that the movie is about sound, you notice very quickly that this movie has been always about the sound. Like every piece of moment in the movie, they've emphasized sound. Like there's this one scene where they're going to go visit the doctor, and they don't know where he is, and that's the one whose car got dragged underground. Mm-hmm. And they're like, I'm pretty sure it was him. They're like, where the hell is he? And you see that they're like, Fred Ward is like stomping on the metal sheet that's kind of hanging on as he's walking off like where the trailer is or whatever, and he's like stomping on that, and Kevin Bacon accidentally kicks over a metal bucket, and it's like all this stuff is like making you really keenly aware of what the sound, like the beginning of the movie, right, is Fred Ward and him just smacking their hammers down to picket the fence in, right? And it's like, oh my god, this movie's been about sound the whole fucking time. And that's great, because that's what the monsters are attracted to.
And there's also, the whole added element of they keep coming across bodies and not knowing what it was, and these creatures are very clearly like, if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, the sounds you make will be your doom. And for our main characters, for a while, they just happen to be in places that are safe.
I also appreciate that the graboids, great name, they act like animals. They don't act like monsters in monster movies. So like they're like a crocodile and a shark in a lot of ways, where a crocodile will just wait there. Like, so if you've climbed up a tree to try and avoid it, they can wait there for a very long time. And that's one of my favorite moments, right, where the first real body is found, right? The guy on top of...
The dehydrated guy.
The dehydrated old drunk guy. And it's like, you're saying that he just sat there and...
and dehydrated?
And starved and dehydrated to death. It's like, yeah. It's like, why would he do that? Oh, it just waited for him because he knew it was...
And
he was there.
He realized, what situation he was in.
I love that attention to detail of it's not just like a monster where it just wanders from place to place and it's like I eat things, or like an alien, right? Where alien just is like it'll come out and do the jump scare and eat you. These act like animals where they also like test things, like smack against things. They're like, that doesn't work. I'm not going to do that. And they learn and they adapt, but they have these animal tendencies that we see that aren't just, this is how a snake or worm acts, but kind of like these other apex predator types. Bartek, what about you? You don't seem to mind monsters and in your movies and creatures and your shows and whatnot. How did you feel about the graboids? Outside the name being obviously silly, how did you feel about them? Did you find them genuinely entertaining, thrilling, scary, or was it just too silly that the movie is about big worms that eat you?
Not at all. Yeah, the fact that they were learning, like each one that gets taken down, was great. The fact that they established that there were 4, and they actually, each one kind of had an arc where they were taken down, and they were all taken down in different ways, and, the previous methods no longer worked on them. Yeah, I thought it was just really good. It really lent itself to the whole tactical thing.
I like how even previous methods that don't work help make other methods work, because it's like, oh, that first one died because it smacked into a hard object, right?
Yeah.
Well, the last one isn't going to do that again. And it's like, well, this one got killed because a bomb was thrown at it and it ate the bomb, right? I can't remember how was the third one killed again?
It swallowed the dynamite thing.
One swallowed the dynamite, one hit into a wall. One got shot to death.
Yeah,
one got shot.
That's the second one.
You can't really outsmart bullets.
But but it did, because it knew not to go back there.
Yeah, no, of course the stump.
And it knew to deflate their tires so that they're fucked. I appreciate that in the last one, right? It's throw the bomb helps to make it go shoot farther, and then he jumps, and it's still the same principle of it's hurtling at an incredible speed towards something, but instead of a solid object, it's nothing.
Yeah, it's a deep fall.
It's a deep fall, and it explodes.
Yeah,
it's fucking amazing stuff.
And yeah, you'd think it would work because they're blind. So do they even know that they're at a cliff?
Well, yeah, I think that they probably have at least the ability to sense things. Hence, they knew where rocks are and stuff eventually, right? But I think it's just the explosion from behind it kind of scares it even more so, and also
that's a good point. Yeah,
but you see what I mean? The detail of, although these previous methods don't work anymore, they do help contribute to the new methods of doing things, which is great. It's just good planning of how to do things. What was a moment that you found to be out of the kills? Because the movies like this about the kills or the aftermath of the kills, what was an effective one for you, Bartek?
You're saying apart from the kills?
No, of the kills. What kill or finding of the dead body did you find particularly effective?
Yeah, they're all strong. I'm just trying to think of a particular one. I guess that last one when you just see it land and
of the graboid
guts
itself.
go everywhere.
That's so fantastic.
With the second last one, the one that swallowed the explosive, the fact that its guts spread everywhere and it landed on some of them, and you can really see this just orange gunk.
Yeah, I really love one of my favorite kills in the entire movie is you don't even see it properly, but you see the aftermath of when they're looking for that farmer guy. And they're where is he? And they find his hat. And they lift his hat up,
and the head's under it.
And his horrified face is sticking out. That's one of my favorites because it's funny, right, Rel? Well, it's funny in a sick way, but in a genuine horror scare moment, it's genuinely great. Isn't it? Because
there's the little scare noise and everything.
Yeah, and also just the image. The image itself is kind of creepy, right? Of just a human face screaming, just buried enough for you to see it.
Yeah, it's especially because in that scene, they're again, this is an example of them caring about it. They're like, oh my God, Fred, where are you? They're actually really genuinely looking for the farmer. And then they find him in a terrifying context.
It's
and they have no idea what the fuck is going on.
And their immediate thought is, we're leaving now.
And they thought it was a serial killer, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just they're actually they have a little bit of banter and everything going on, and they butt heads a bit with some other people, they're really genuinely nice. Like, they genuinely warn the construction workers. It's like, oh my god, guys, there's like a psycho killer going around. We got to get the hell out of here. Go, go, go.
And they're just like, whatever. All right. I also like when that one construction worker guy gets killed because not of a graboid, but because the graboid has made it so rocks fall on him and crush him. That was pretty decent too. The film isn't actually the film does a good job in terms of horror of it doesn't languish too much, probably because of the budget and the constraints, but it's just like you just see, oh, they're gone now, and there's just like a little puddle of blood or brains and a helmet or something like that. It's like, oh, okay. A nice way to work within your budget, right? Because you're not going to have every scene is going to be like tentacles come on the ground and rip them in half and drink their blood. It's going to be a lot of, we've walked into the scene, hey, I can hear a radio playing. That's also a great sequence.
Where's the golden oldie coming from?
What did you think of that sequence, Bartek? Because that's like a whole thing, right? You get like the classic, what would be in another movie, the teen lovers in their car, but instead this is an old married couple who've just moved into town.
Oh, what I think of their death scene.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, they had that whole horror thing of like, come on, let's get away. No, I want to investigate.
Yeah.
Going on.
They would be teenagers in another movie, right?
Yeah, but they also had like that, like kind of, how do I describe it? Elderly sweetness where they're like,
Yeah.
oh, let's look at the stars. Oh, when we have our home, we'll fix the roof and it'll be great. Oh, but we could look at the stars if we didn't have a roof.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, just kind of sweet sentimentality rather than, like the pumpkin head teenage young people.
Yeah.
One point to bring up. I actually this is one of those things that struck me watching this, because this didn't strike me in high school, but watching this film, watching it again now, and like I actually really like the way they depict the night sky in Tremors.
Yeah,
it's very charming actually.
Yeah, it's very nice. I also love with a movie like this, we talk about the sense of community, the sense of this, the sense of the monsters. I love a movie that gives me a sense of location as well. I felt like I got to understand the geography of the entire Perfection town while still not seeing all of it, if you catch my drift. Like, I really got a sense of how this town operates and who's over there and who's like, who lives really far out, who lives close. The idea of these are the new people that have come to town, the doctor and his wife, and the fact that they didn't have a doctor before is kind of fucked, and like, or they've only just gotten one now that's kind of in the town. And it's just like, I love a film that does that, because films can often forget that, especially ones that are supposed to be taking location in a small area. Like we talked about that with the Last Jedi, where we lost all sense of geography in The Last Jedi in multiple sequences, like the cat and mouse chase, or when they're actually on the Salt planet. It's like, I just don't know where who is and where, why, and this and this. And even though this is a small, this is Tremors, people, the movie where Kevin Bacon versus a big worm, the fact that it gets that right, is there anything wrong with the film? Because I think that this is one of those films where it's a masterpiece to me. Perfect. It hits everything it needs to. I don't think I would change a singular thing about the movie. The music's great, the direction's great, the acting's great, the characters, the monsters are great, the ending stuff is great, the beginning, each character has their little arc that they go through. I don't know if I could or would suggest any type of change. I think for what this is, it's 100% perfect, because I also appreciate that this isn't a spoof of monster movies. It just is one.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly, but it still has like a little comedic sensibility to it, but it's not like it's winking and nodding at you that this is a silly B movie. It is genuinely trying to be the best type of these movies. And I always champion that. I love Robert Rodriguez and Tarantino, but their grindhouse movies, they're okay, but they're just trying to do a spoof version of those grindhouse movies instead of taking one of those old grindhouse movies and trying to make the best version of that you can. This is like looking at those old 1950s horror movies, and it's like, let's try and make the best version of this we can.
Yeah, the best B movie.
And they do.
That's a good point.
Because of I love this movie. I've got a lot of nostalgia for this movie. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to
Me too.
but I'm trying to. I gotta try and be I gotta try and be fair. It's like I'm racking my brain. Is there anything actually wrong with Tremors? Like, is there anything it's trying to do and doesn't reach?
Listen,
And I'm
having the unbiased version of what you're having.
I'm drawing a
You-
blank,
well,
man.
I'm gonna
I
tell
can't.
you, Bartek did
I
say
can't
he had
think
a.
of-
Bartek did say he had
can't
a
think
little
of-
bit of a dry spell with the
Yeah.
beginning of the
No.
movie. What do you think
But even
was contributing to that?
even with that dry spell, though, I'm thinking back on it now. It's like, yeah, I would watch this film again in its entirety. I guess just at first we were following our two main characters, and it was effectively it was building up things. But really, it was the whole ensemble bit where I really got suckered in. But now I think, like, if I'm gonna rewatch this film, knowing how it's gonna go, I'm probably gonna enjoy all that stuff a bit more because I'm gonna notice all of like the foreshadowing. As you said, I'll notice the sound design of the film. Yeah, so I guess just on my first viewing, it was a little bit like, okay, let's see where this is going.
Yeah, and you didn't know what you were getting in for either properly.
Not quite, no.
What did we all think of Kevin Bacon? Because Kevin Bacon's an iconic figure, all this stuff. I don't know if you know this, Bartek, but Kevin Bacon, when he was making this film, was kind of like Matthew Broderick, where he was like, my career is over. I'm in a worm movie now.
Yeah,
I went from Footloose to a big worm movie now.
Well,
my career is over. I am done.
Well, I don't know if you're basing that on like the like behind the scenes DVD extra thing, but based on like the trivia, they had like 2 points that were kind of contradictory.
Well, Kevin Bacon's changed his mind a bit. Like,
Oh,
he was
okay.
like, he was a really fun film to make, but Kevin Bacon is like this. When you watch interviews with him, he's very self-aware of the business. And he's like, very like, hey, I make a film because I want to be big again, so I make these type of movies. And this was one where it's like, I wasn't getting any work. John Hughes wasn't really interested in having me and stuff. These people weren't interested. I was kind of no longer in my pretty boy phase, even though I was still hot in this. So I was in this worm movie, and it was a really fun film to make, like really fun, but at the same time, really aware that I'm in a big worm movie. I was the leading star. And I'm a leading star in a worm movie.
He does a hell of a job, though.
He's a pretty boy named Valentine.
Like, it's impressive.
So what did you think of Kevin Bacon? And what do you think of him as a general person or persona or thing?
In general, I'm not really too aware of him. So,
But you know of stuff, the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
I've heard of the concept, yeah.
Yeah. But what did you think of him in this? You've seen him in that X-Men movie, right? First Class? He was a bad guy.
I have seen that one.
He was a bad guy.
Who was the bad guy in that?
Kevin Bacon.
No, but like, what was the character?
I've watched that.
He was-
I've watched that movie, but I can't remember what that character.
His thing. I can't remember what his thing was. I remember that, spoiler alerts, he dies because Magneto slowly puts his coin into his own head. That was a thing.
That's
that
right.
happened.
That happened.
Okay, I really don't remember.
I didn't remember.
But he was
that.
a bad guy in that. All I remember from First Class is Kevin Bacon was really good in it, but I can't remember what he did.
I'm
But
sure it was a
The
great
whole point
performance,
is,
but sorry.
here he is in this, playing the scrappy hick boy. What did you think of him? Because he's kind of he's a hero of the movie. Him and Fred Ward.
Yeah. He's definitely the main protagonist of the two.
Yes.
Because he's the one that like has his reservations about his lot in life.
He has ideas of what he wants from women.
He's the one that he's got that whole thing. He's the one where he'll often have the other main character like list out his flaws of like, oh, you know what? Now you're saying this. Now you're saying that. But then he has his moments where he like agrees and they're kind of on the same page. The other one sort of plays a more mentor role to him. I think he does very well.
I love him in this. This is probably my favorite movie of his because he is having fun. I have a problem with Kevin Bacon in his earlier roles of he is very like, I am the pretty boy. And you're here for me. A little bit ego-centric to me. I love Kevin Bacon. He seems like a cool guy, and I'm really liking his later work. I really like, there was this movie where he played a cop. I can't remember the name of it, but I like him, and I love him in this because it doesn't feel like he's taking himself too seriously, but he's not like he's cashing it in. Like, he does care. You can see it here, but he's not taking it too seriously. He's not being over the top. I think he's just right. And I love his character, and I love Fred Ward's character too. They're these two schmoes who don't want to be here. They want to do bigger and better things, but when push comes to shove, they'll sacrifice themselves to save everyone else. And, you know, don't you miss having heroes like that in your story?
Yeah, again, it was really nice seeing a horror film where people weren't idiots and, you know, cannon fodder for the... Well, not cannon fodder, that implies sacrifice, but, you know, fodder for being eaten,
Like
killed
pricks,
by the monsters.
pricks.
Pricks.
Prey.
Yeah. Horror movie arseholes.
Prey.
Prey, that's a great word.
Sorry, if I could just jump back to the creature design, because like, it's so good, isn't it?
It
It's
is.
so good.
I
And
want
it's
one.
It's one of the reasons this film works so well, where it's like, you know, the free sort of slug tongues and the main mouth with like the beak and the sort of the scoots and things and the little, I don't even know what you would call the little
The fins.
little fin things
That help it
The
maneuver through
sort
the
of
dirt. Yeah.
shoot through the dirt. But it's like, it is so good, and like.
And
And the blood as well, how it's kind of like orangey, but like when there's a lot, there's like a bit of red in it.
Yeah.
And it's especially, like, sticky.
I
It's
also-
like viscous.
I also like there's a little touch every now and then of when they explode one or it vomits up something. Sometimes you can see people's clothing shoot out as well because they've eaten people.
I didn't notice that.
So that's a nice touch as well. Like, again, this film, it follows through on everything. It sets everything up. It follows through. It's filled with all these details, and it didn't need to be, but it has just good filmmaking and good storytelling and good characterization where you just go, oh wow, they care. I just want to touch upon what I said before about, like, don't you just miss having heroes like this in your big story? Because I feel like in a lot of more modern movies, maybe because they're more superhero movies now, you don't have these type of characters who are like have this arc and yet they're still good enough to sacrifice themselves like for the greater good. And if they do, it's like Iron Man, where it's like, I'm sacrificing myself to save the entire universe, not just to save that one little girl on a pogo stick. Like, Kevin Bacon could have fucking died doing that. One of my other favorite scenes is I don't know, right, because it's funny and tense. That's this movie, right? It's a comedy, but it's genuinely tense.
I think that's why, because I want to get into the thing now where I saw this I saw this a little bit on the internet when I was looking up some Tremors stuff. Some people are like, oh, you know, it's a horror movie, and then some people refer to it as just a comedy.
I think it's both.
And yeah, it is both.
And I think it's because the comedy doesn't take away from the horror, but the horror doesn't ruin the comedy. It's not like people are making jokes about how Chang died, right? People are genuinely heartbroken that he's there, but the thing I love is, here's a comedic moment of Kevin Bacon standing there and the worm tongue is out trying to find his foot.
And he keeps, like, hopping over.
And it keeps
well,
jumping.
not hopping, but yeah.
He keeps jumping when the foot gets put down. And
I mean, it's
see,
such
that's
a-
genuinely
such a-
tense, though. But it's also, it's kind of funny, right?
Yeah,
it's
and-
kind of funny, but it isn't winking at you. It isn't saying, look at Kevin Bacon give this physical comedy performance of Rowan Atkinson. It's just like, you would have to do that, and it's kind of amusing. But at the same time, that little girl's life is in risk.
Yeah, and I'm not saying this as like a criticism of the film, but like they have the whole establishment of you know, the guy that dehydrated. This is a monster which, if you try to avoid it, you'll essentially just be waiting out till your death. And that can be in another story, like kind of existentially psychological horror kind of thing. And even though that is an element at points, you never really dwell on that element of despair. It's always kind of focusing on, like, okay, how do we get out of this, and you know, staying
only in
calm
the
and all
final
that.
act do you really have it when they're all stuck on those rocks and they're trying to figure it out. But there's that point where it's like, I just don't know, man. That one worm is too fucking smart.
Yeah, but like no one. I mean, obviously they are, you know, tense and they're freaking out, but like no one's like going so crazy that they're gonna stab everyone else or anything
No,
like that.
the only one who's the unreliable one is the young teenager,
Yeah, Melvin.
Melvin, who I love when they give him the gun and it's not loaded. It's like, fuck you, bird.
And he's following through on what he said before. I wouldn't give you a gun even if it was World War III. Turns out I just wouldn't give you a loaded one.
Yeah, I think this is the perfect horror comedy because I think it doesn't go too extreme in either degree. Like, it's not like so horror that it only appeals to horror fans, yet it's not so comedy that it only does it for comedy fans. And I know that you haven't seen this movie, but it reminds me of Shaun of the Dead, where Shaun of the Dead hits that perfect sweet spot of being a real good zombie movie and a really good comedy. And it hits that sweet spot of having the right amount of both, where it doesn't feel like it's just one or just the other. And it's kind of hard to fully say, oh, well, Tremors is just a comedy movie, because it is a creature feature movie. It is a monster movie. It is one of those ones that really it is about the tension of scenes, the amount of times where it's just silence and people really worrying about knocking something over. It's just like, edge of the seat stuff, but at the same time, it is kind of funny that the worm rips off her pants.
This is a horror comedy where neither element compromises the other, really.
Because as I brought up before, my introduction to this movie is going to the video rental shop, getting during that period, my brother and I and my mates and I, it's like we got tons and tons of horror and monster movies and shit, and mostly monster movies and creature features and shit from
and Godzilla
video shops, and I can't even remember the vast majority of them because most of them sucked. But this is really good, and it really does get both these tones right, and that's rare. A lot of films aim for horror comedy, and one of them will. They might succeed with one, but that'll fuck the other one.
Yeah,
but this one really does get both.
It's interesting because the whole identity of a B movie is that they're not meant to be perfect, or you really shouldn't expect them to be perfect. There's going to be there are flaws in it, but that adds to the charm.
Budgetary constraints, or they're leaning too hard on a genre-specific trope element.
Yeah, so again, because I wasn't too aware of this film, I did get the sense of this is probably going to be a B movie thing, so it's going to be imperfect, but charming. But then I was yeah, you're right. What are really genuine flaws of the? I'm struggling.
We've talked about this on the pod before, and many people have of. Why remake a great film and just try to redo it again like Ghostbusters? Why the fuck do that? Why not grab an imperfect film that has the potential and try to make it great? That is always something. And although this isn't directly remaking something, it is calling back to a certain type of movie, and it is just, how about we actually try to make this the best we can possibly make it? And, we talk about there's those Sharknado movies, right? Where they're well, let's on purposely make it shit. Yeah. Even though there's ludicrous premise. I'm not saying I want those movies to take it deadly serious and try to make it, but it's this is a silly idea, but they take it so genuine with it that you can't help but be won over by the film's charm. And one of the things I want to talk about is horror stuff is obvious. The comedy to me, it's not like I'm laughing throughout the movie, but it's more that I'm very amused. And what I mean is the biggest comedy to me in the movie is Burt Gummer. Hence he's also now one of the main characters, because he's inherently a funny character. And what makes him funny to me, and Will, you can probably touch upon this as can you, Bartek, is in all of these monster movies and all these creature things and all of these ones where our heroes are attacked by monsters, that character never succeeds. They always fail and die. Or there's a point in which, oh no, the guns don't work, we have to fight it with our fists, or something like in Predator. I love in this movie, there is that moment where the graboid smashes through their basement, and I don't know if you assume that they'll probably die, but you just see, oh no, they succeed.
Yeah,
the shot where it pans over, they have a wall of guns, and they just go through each one. They have to go through the elephant gun, and it's
There was one point where I think one of them threw down one of their guns, and the worm kind of looked at it at one point. I'm like, oh my god, is the worm gonna use the gun on them?
But that's where my amusement comes from with Tremors primarily, is it's not like they're subverting the expectations of it, but they are in a way, because those characters never succeed in these movies. The fact that these ones do, and the fact of, yeah, sure, Fred Ward drops his gun on the ground and the worm smashes it, but the fact that he got to use it, it's that's where I get amusement from, is those characters are actually helpful, while in most of these movies, they're never helpful.
Their downfall is always something ironic to their perceived merits. their whole thing in this film is like, oh, we have a lot of guns, we're prepared to use these guns in case of an emergency, and the threat in another movie would be that the threat is immune to bullets.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, I'm super prepared with guns, and the thing is immune to guns.
The thing that, obviously, it takes a lot of bullets to put one down, but I love one of the things that they mention, which I do love, is we have a lot of guns, but we never prepped to shoot through the ground.
Yeah.
Which is a genuinely great thing that makes their strength, which is being gun nuts, weakened. Because really, guns aren't supposed to shoot through the ground.
Yeah. And again, in another more typical, I guess, kind of movie where we're talking about these characters wouldn't survive, that would probably be the irony thing. Like, oh, they were killed when the monsters were really utilizing their underground abilities.
But I do love, even at the end, Bert's bombs that he makes are very helpful. Very helpful.
Yeah.
Even though at the end they have the thing where it throws a bomb back, right, and all of them go off, and it's like, but...
Then they use it by not throwing it at them.
See, we're talking, and we've got smiles on our faces discussing this, because we've watched all of these movies in some way, shape, or form, and they always undermine these type of characters to make them fail because they need to fail. When we talked about Pumpkinhead on the pod, there's like this moment in the film where the jerk character guy and the main Lance Henriksen team up for a little bit, and then the jerk character gets like a gun and he shoots, and Pumpkinhead just like grabs the gun and just shoves the gun through that guy's chest, and that was really funny. But it's like, but imagine if that guy was actually useful.
Yeah.
That's what this movie is.
One really great thing about Tremors is pretty much every character has a good idea at some point or helps out.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, again, coming back to the community thing, they really needed everyone to get through it.
I even like the mother on the roof. She's the one that lets them know that they're learning because they're trying to undo the foundation of her house first. I love even Miguel asks, like, I think it was Miguel or someone else asks, like, they didn't even make any noise. Why are they bugging them? It's like, yeah, why are they doing that?
The less practical, the ones who aren't as much doers, they use observation.
I think it's a pretty perfect little movie, and you could see, but Will and I could see, but Bartek, how do you feel about the idea that the franchise fell in love with Bert and made him the central thrust of it? Because as viewers, just from myself and Will, we as an audience fell in love with Bert as a character and wanted to see more.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you had the same feeling or not, but how do you feel about that whole stuff about, did you fall in love with him, and did you see why they fell in love with him and wanted to make him the central thrust?
I'd want to rewatch the film one more time to fully get that, but I did enjoy him in the end, yeah. And I'm, again, like, reading the trivia and stuff about how he becomes the main character was interesting.
Yeah.
I thought it was extra interesting that apparently for all of the sequels they have, they're all apparently like really kind of high quality.
Well, I think the first 4 and the TV show, they made a TV show as well.
Right.
I think the first 4 movies and the TV show are genuinely great films. The first one's the best.
Mm-hmm.
They all get weaker. I actually think the 4th film is very close, which is a prequel film.
Yeah.
So he plays his great-great-great-grandfather or whatever, Hiram Gummer.
Okay.
He has a musket. And I genuinely think the 4th film is a great one, but and the 3rd one I like too. The 2nd one's alright because Fred Ward's still in it. But the 2nd one is just Bert, and that's cool. But
I have seen the second one. I remember thinking it was okay, but that's been a long time.
it has some good tension.
That's going back to like year 8.
It had some good tension moments, and they get sillier. They evolve the monsters. They have like a cycle of growth. So in the second one, they're no longer these creatures on the ground, but they're like these little ones that walk on the ground. That they're cool. And then the third one's got ones that fly.
Yeah, I heard one of them they're called arse blasters.
Yeah, the third one, the ones that fly because they shoot fire at you from their arse.
Right.
There you go.
And they're genuinely effective creatures, even though the CG is not the greatest. But
well, still, even if the ones after the 4th one aren't great, it's pretty impressive that the first 4 films in a horror franchise are apparently all pretty good.
How
And I
many
enjoy
are
it.
there? Because when I
There's
was
6.
I think there actually might be be 7. I think one came out last year.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I was like flicking through the Tremors thing, I saw like Tremors 7, Shrieker Island.
When
and
I
it's
was-
still got Bert.
when I
He's
was-
still doing it in 2020.
When I was
Good for him.
when I was
Fucking good on him, man.
when I was looking at all the streaming services that I had access to, the only ones that were available to me were the 2 newest ones. I was like, oh wow, these are really recent.
I got to talk about the actor Michael Gross, who plays Bert Gummer.
Mm-hmm.
You may not be aware, but before he did this, it was a very unconventional choice to get him to play the NRA gunner prepper nut job, because he was in the TV show Family Ties, which was the show where Michael J. Fox came from.
Okay.
So the pitch of that show is, you remember Ned Flanders' parents?
The Beatniks.
Yeah, now imagine them, but their son is the Gordon Gekko, is a Gordon Gekko type, where he's like an 80s Wall Street business guy.
Mm-hmm.
That's Family Ties. But the two parents are these new agey beatnik hippies, and Michael J. Fox, their son, is a sleazy 80s business nut job type, and they're like flummoxed, and there's other stuff that goes on. Michael Gross, Bert Gummer, he plays like the lovable dad in that, and he's like down to earth, and he's a hippie type. As soon as that show finished, literally the day that they finished shooting
Yeah, I
the
read
last
that
episode,
trivia.
he went to the set and went off the set and made this movie. And it's like such a career flip, because the character is just so different. And now people just know him as Bert Gummer more so than the dad from Family Ties, which is great. I love when an actor gets this type of role and they just completely reinvents them. And he seems to love it. He seems to just love being Bert.
If he's still doing it 31 years later, then
I don't want to
imagine.
spoil anything, but I think he's done his last movie now. But I think I read something where they had like the 30th anniversary of Tremors, and he was the only cast member that turned up.
Okay.
Isn't that kind of bummer? Because but he's so awesome, and I think he's great as his character, and I just love that they saw that we liked him a lot and went, yeah, he is pretty cool, let's bring him back. And they just kept bringing him back, and it's great. If anyone can find the Tremors show, it's worth a watch. It's actually pretty hard to find, or at least in my recollection. But yeah, it's just them in perfection dealing with like monster stuff, monster of the week type stuff. And it's really fun. I enjoyed the show, and he's in it, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of others turn up. But yeah, that's Tremors. I don't know if there's much else to say other than just keep praising it for all these great elements. I think the scene that leaves me the most impressed is the scene where it breaks through their basement and starts attacking them, because it's like every single trick in the book is used. Like you talked about when he throws the gun on the ground. That's a great way, because they throw the gun on the ground and there's a secret cut there. So there's a secret cut there. So then now it's a miniature gun on the ground, and the camera pans up, and that's a miniature or a puppet of the worm smacking up or looking at it.
Oh, okay.
And you wouldn't know that
Ooh.
because it's just that seamless. It's just good filmmaking. It's just good film. The only shot that doesn't work is like they have a rear projection of Bert shooting at it, and that's like one single shot in a 5-minute sequence. Yeah, there's lots of... They have every trick there.
I remember
Force perspectives, miniatures, puppets, trick shots,
I remember
everything.
I remember one of the first like effects that really got me was one of the ones where you got a shot of it looked like they used like a carpet or something to indicate like it moving and like it leaving. It was one of those non-POV ones where you saw it moving from underground and like it was like leaving a bump as it was.
Is that the one where it's like going under the little boards outside the shop and they sort of wave up?
Oh, that's later
love
on, but
that.
I don't think
that's a great shot.
I don't think it was in town.
Oh, sorry, not that
No,
one.
it's one of the earlier ones when they're
early.
figuring out the
yeah.
seismographs are figuring out where they are.
I can't remember if any of the characters were in this particular scene, but it looked like something's under your carpet and like it's just a bump moving across the ground.
Oh, wait, yes, no, I do remember that one where it kind of the ground comes up.
This is filmmaking I miss, man, because now they would just, if they made a proper big Tremors movie again, it would just be CG.
Yeah, this is one of those films where you watch it and you have to think to yourself, like, man, they did this without CGI.
Yeah.
or maybe, I don't know if they
But
used any,
it's more practical-based movie.
Yeah, that's the main sentiment.
I think for 1999,
1990?
This
We weren't born yet.
would have been, for a low-budget film, surely that wouldn't have any CG.
But that's Tremors, people. Great choice, Will. It brings a smile to my face to watch it. It is one of those.
Oh, is there two more? No, actually, three more little minor things.
Yeah.
I can bring up.
I was just going to mention that the film is one of those few where I fist pump when things happen in it because I'm so satisfied with people succeeding. Man, that was something when I was watching it. Star Wars Last Jedi keeps popping into my brain because that film had a lot in common of like, this is teamwork and we're working to make plans. But that film is like, watch our characters just fucking fail for no reason. Is that satisfying to you? And I was like,
It was also...
oh man, I just miss when people were able to succeed.
And that film was also all C-plots, the movie or whatever the
Yeah.
Red Letter Media said.
Yeah. So you want to touch upon three things before we wrap up?
Yes, I've got to touch on three things. Oh, yeah, first thing I was going to mention earlier, it's like we were bringing up the like sharks. The film, apparently when they came up with the writers on the initial idea, it was going to be called Land Sharks, but they changed their mind. But I've forgotten, why did they change their mind? Something else got called Land Shark in some context.
Yeah.
But I can't, it's like there on the, like somewhere in the ether, but I can't pick
Well, I
it
said
out.
Sand Shark, but Land Shark, I guess.
And calling it Tremors has also made that thing where people just refer to them as Tremors instead of Graboids, which is the official title. That's the real title. They're called Graboids. But obviously people just call them Tremors because that's the movie, and it is just a cool name, Tremors. Bartek looks a bit perplexed at that idea, but that's just a thing that people call it because Graboids is so silly.
It's the Tremors.
I understand the
Tremors are
concept of
coming at
thinking
us.
of them as the name of the film, but I can't make the leap because I just associate it with seismic activity.
But they're Tremors, Bartek. They
No.
come for you.
Like, the thing that did surprise me is that they took Chang's naming, like, seriously.
What was his last thing?
Yeah, exactly. It was a nice little
I'm gonna
legacy.
So the other things you want to touch upon?
This is like really minor, but it's like
Give it to us.
it is a little thing that I like. Like I think it's just one of the things I love about this film, and you brought this up a lot, Bartek, is it is tactical. It's like the intelligent worm, Mr. Stumpy, and all the people in the town are like really in this battle of wits.
They're both learning from each other.
And there's just this one little clever moment that I love when Miguel sort of hops down. He's sort of hanging from the building to start up the tractor. He gets like a handkerchief or something, and he ties his arm to the windowsill.
Yeah. So, he
So
doesn't
that way, when
fall.
the worm goes underneath him and the Chang's shop is all shaken. I don't know why I shook there as if the mic could pick it up.
Because you're
but
into
I
it.
did.
You're
And
into
you know,
it.
he's got like a lifeline, and it's just like it's such a minor little thing, but it's just such a beautiful example of like the cleverness that's
And the
going
film's
on.
filled with things
yeah,
like
like
that.
it's all the time.
And I keep thinking to myself, they didn't need to do that, but the fact that they did shows that they care.
like they're really thinking about how everything would play out.
Yeah.
And then, I might even pluck a fourth minor thing here to extend this out because it's like
One for every graboid.
Yes, one in tribute to every graboid who lost their lives during the course of this film.
They're an endangered species.
For his death.
Oh,
Where were the EPA for this?
to jump back to a point Ryan brought up before. I gestured like a jump there. I seem to be forgetting that I'm on a podcast.
It's for us, I know.
but visual aids for everyone in the audience and everything. And
It was a very good
everyone
arc.
here. Yeah, that was a real arc. To touch on the main character's heroism,
Mm.
even before the characters are aware that any sort of
Shenanigans.
violence is going on, when they see the drunk up on the when they realize it's the town drunk up on the power lines, you know, Kevin Bacon Valentine, he does go up there. It's like,
Well,
you know,
was that one of the
that's a bit of a
instances where
dangerous,
was that
you know?
was that one of the instances where they rock paper scissors?
Yeah, but he was like, but they was like, we can't leave him there. It's like, yeah, they're like, oh, thanks for doing
Yes,
this,
but
mate.
but he's lawful. He respects the law of rock paper scissors.
Like,
Until he doesn't.
They might be pissed that, oh, we have to go up to get him, but they still went to do it. It didn't pan out, unfortunately, but they
Yeah.
still went to do it.
no,
That's
well, he got the body, so
real
technically he did.
real genuine heroism
And
on
that's-
display.
One more you got?
Yeah, I got one more minor thing, and it's
For
like
the- for the-
For Stumpy.
because
Stumpy.
Bert, yeah, this one's for Stumpy, because Bert has my favorite bloody line, and it's my dad's favorite line in the movie too, about the whole they're like about to do the fishing with the bombs, and
Yes.
Red Ward asks him about where do you get the fuse from? It's like, oh, it's cannon fuse. It's like, what the hell do you use that for?
For
For
my
my cannon.
Of course he
It's
has a
just-
cannon.
Oh, it's just such a perfect, man.
I even like
Perfect.
one last thing, I guess, is we haven't talked about the woman in the film. She was great.
We haven't, yeah.
She was
She's-
great.
she's
She came
great.
up with so many great things, like making the water burst on the thing, and that kind of fucked her over because it like ripped off the ladder, and she's like stuck and all this. And
Well, that sequence was the two characters fucking themselves over to save the other, and then both
Yeah.
coming out in the end.
exactly, and I really love because it's again, this film is very silly. But it's done so well that you don't even scoff at the fact that one of the scenarios involves her determining that they need to pole vault their way out by just going over each one of the rocks. That's so silly. In another movie, we would be rolling our eyes and talking about how stupid that was. But in this, you're like, well, what else are they going to do? It's like, if I was there, I don't know if I would have thought of doing that. I'm glad she was there to think of it, because they could have died on those rocks. I love it.
They even had a moment where, what was the second guy's name? Earl?
Yeah.
Where Earl like messed up his first vault, but it wasn't like a tense scene where it was like, oh shit, is he gonna die? It was kind of lighthearted because he fell back.
He's an older guy. And that's it. That's Tremors. Great choice, Will. It really is one of those, and I'm glad that you've got to experience now, Bartek, and hopefully you'll want to revisit it. I reckon you and your brother would enjoy watching that. I reckon your brother might get a kick out of it.
Yeah, he might.
Classic family movie. I
I,
watch it with my brother and
genuinely
my dad
think
all
it
the
is one of
time.
those monster movies you could sit down with the whole family and just enjoy. Like, I think your mum may even get a kick out
again,
of it.
this
She
is-
she seems to have a fun taste in movies.
I don't know about monster films, but again, this is a horror film where like the horror isn't like too.
But your
Too
mum,
much the
your mum
focus.
seems to have a very classical taste. Like, I don't know if she's a big fan of Jaws or not, but I reckon that she would just get a kick out of just how like classic movie this feels. Like, they just don't make them like this now, do they? They don't make movies like Tremors.
Yeah.
So Bartek, what movie are you going to be recommending for us to watch next episode?
I'm also picking a 90s film. I am picking The Truman Show.
The Truman Show with Jim Carrey.
The
And
one and only.
You know you've chosen a Paul Giamatti movie.
Yes, I have.
Well, sorry, Will, you won't be there for the Paul Giamatti film.
Says
I'm
who?
actually- That's
Says
a cut.
who?
That is a genuine cut.
Says who?
That's a genuine cut.
You're the only
I'm
one that said it, Ryan.
bleeding.
And it's got I can't remember that actor's name. I want to say Alan Arkin, but not Alan Arkin, the guy who's like the creator of the whole entire the God character. And he plays the
Yeah.
exact same fucking character in Snowpiercer. I'm forgetting that guy's name, but we'll talk about Truman Show next time. So make sure to give that a watch in the interim if you have not. Be warned, it is Jim Carrey, not in just a pure comedy. So don't get disappointed by that, because I've met someone who watched it and was very annoyed by it because they didn't find it funny. I think it's
Okay.
still a funny movie,
Yeah,
but
got
it's
its
not an
moments.
outright Jim Carrey. It's not The Mask.
Hmm.
It's not him as the Riddler.
Ace Ventura.
Joygasm. It's not him in Yes Man. So that's it. Thanks very much, Will, for popping on in and giving us your thoughts and takes. Until next time, listening people, remember to hit us up on the social medias. What ones are we on, Bartek?
We are on Facebook. We're on Twitter. I don't think YouTube counts as social media, but we're on that.
That's a platform.
That's
Do
a
you-
platform.
Do you guys have Instagram?
Nah, we don't have a Tumblr either.
We
You don't have any half-naked pictures of yourselves on Instagram? What's going on, lads?
I'm sorry, who should do some Instagram comedy where we just prank people while they're out on their day. And
Is that what people do on Instagram?
Yeah, they do comedy.
Okay.
Yeah, apparently. Apparently. Comedy. So, yeah, one of those. Spin Polish Presents, you'll find us. We have our email, spitandpolished@gmail.com, where you can recommend movies to us. It's not just Will being wet and wild. He felt very dry this episode, Will, because there was no water to really dash around in and get wet and wild. Only one in the water tower.
I mean, it's a dry movie, you know. It's a dry movie. It's a desert.
My brain, for some reason, whenever I see one of those water towers in a desert in those movies, I always think of the opening scene of Wild Wild West with Will Smith, where he's fucking a chick in the water tower. That's what I think of. Don't know why, because I always remember that being like, what a weird way to start this movie, huh? With his character. The movie actually starts with a guy running around with a fucking thing on his neck and he gets his head cut off by Kenneth Branagh, but that's a different movie for a different time. That's it.
Yeah, that's for 2 weeks from now when you pick it.
I'm not picking fucking Wild Wild West. I love Kevin Kline, but not that much. I love Kenneth Branagh as I would. Hey! If I was John Peters, I would definitely recommend doing that. He loves his giant spiders. That's it. Bartek, do you want to leave us on any profound words of wisdom?
I
know it's tough.
Let's see. What do people need in January 2021?
Heck, this might even come out in Feb 2021.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, we're right at the end, aren't we?
Yeah, we're at the end, buddy.
Ooh, February.
That's how I end the episode. Yeah, we're at the end, buddy. And then just ends before you give any words of wisdom.
Remember, even when your friends say it's the end, it's never the end.
So next week we won't be doing This Is the End, the film with Jonah Hill.
Because I didn't pick it.
No, not this time.
I like the movie, though.
No, I've never seen it.
See you listening, people.